Well, it's been a long day. We've heard some great lectures, but I'll just briefly introduce myself. My name is Ajna Wilson. I'm an attorney from the Los Angeles area. I've been working with food and food activism for quite a long time, but I got involved with raw milk in 2010. I represented the RAWMI Foods matter down in Los Angeles that's still pending, and also is working with a lot of different issues around the country and working with farm to consumer legal defense. But right now we're going to focus on farmers, and the first thing that I wanted to do, and these are all the RAWMI listed producers, so what I'd like to happen is for first of all to introduce yourselves and tell us the number of cows that you have, or what the structure of your farm is, the location, and just a general story of how you got to the position you are on today.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, go for it.
I'm Charlotte Smith, and I own Shampoo Creamery, and we are about 30 minutes southwest of Portland, Oregon, in the lush, beautiful Willamette Valley. So we are pasture-based, and our cows are knee-deep on grass about 9 months of the year, and and I'm surrounded by other really wonderful dairies, even though they pasteurize their milk. It's just a great place to have dairy cows. Some of our challenges are the rain and things like that all winter.
How many cows do you
I'm milking 4 cows right now, and I milk twice a day. But I have decided that for sustainability, we're going to ease into once-a-day milking next year, cow by cow. It'll mean cutting back on our customers, but this is a really difficult lifestyle, as many of you know. And so that sounds like a vacation to me, to be done with chores at 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
And one of the things that Mark's mentioned is that you've had an amazing reporting numbers. Your numbers are so low, zeros and ones. How long have you been a member of RAWMI?
Well, I've been a member for since last September. Mark and I started working on it early last summer. And that I've always been that way. I've done this for 4 years, and I started out with really good numbers, and I just thought everyone did that, and I was shocked. Well, the Foundation Farm, I was really involved with that, and part of that was, and doing what I'm doing today and calling Mark and saying, let's get going with RAWMI because we need this, is because I thought everybody really researched it and learned how to test their milk and learned how to produce really safe raw milk, from day one. And I did, and it was important to me to test my milk every month and be really in close touch with my vet and learn how to keep it clean. And so I've done that since day one. And again, I just thought everyone did it till the E. coli outbreak about 1.5 years ago, and I was shocked. But
Yeah, that was definitely a neighborhood.
okay.
Go on. We're going to get through everybody and then come back and go into some of the protocols that have been learned.
Okay. Oh, hi, I'm Alice Juggerton. I'm from Chilliwack, British Columbia. So I've come a long way to be here today, just to be a part of this training. Mark had come out to a conference about 6 months ago that we put on in Vancouver on fresh milk. And after the conference, I said to him, I was asking about RAWMI, and just asked him if I could get listed, and being international, and he's like, right on. So here I am today. I started never intending to be a big dairy farmer. I grew up on a dairy farm. I was one of 11 children, and I was a girl. So that meant there was no chance in me carrying on in that business, right? The guys got to do that. That was how we grew up. And so when I was homeschooling my children, and we decided that we wanted to have a little bit more of a diverse education, and we started with 1 cow. Ran into the same problem that a lot of people have is, when a cow has too much milk, what do? It's illegal to sell it, you can't give it away, conscience isn't going to allow you to throw it away, so what do? And we started a herd share program. That went really well for a while till it expanded. The demand grew very quickly, and we shared the herd share. We had a couple cows at our farm, and then it grew to about 10 cows on another farm that we joined together. And in May of 2007, we moved to a new location, 24-acre farm, and it was across the road from a quota holding dairy farmer. And I know it's a little bit different here in the States, but in Canada, we have a supply managed system, and that controls 100% of the dairy. And that was one of our biggest challenges that we were facing. We ran into a lot of hostility from neighbors, and just continued to just share to grow the farm. And so not planning to start a business. Now today we're milking about 30 cows, and we have about 50 animals on the farm.
Thank you.
I'm Shauna Barr. This is my husband Jacob. We're from Mount Shasta, California, so just north of here. We've been listed with RAWMI just since July, and we also started with 1 cow, and our gateway into milk production was we were in search of milk for our family from a known source. We couldn't find it locally. Both my husband and I are very much local food people, and we were seeking to feed ourselves and in extension to that, to feed our community. We milk 3 cows now, and we've only been offering milk to our greater community since August. Prior to that, we milked 1 or 2 cows for ourselves with some help with some very close family friends, and for 5 years just really climbed that steep learning curve of how to take care of dairy cows, how to produce milk well. We have a diversified small family farm. We serve people primarily within about 10 miles from our farm with pastured chicken eggs and pork and a small herd of grass-fed beef. And milk is like the centerpiece of our farm. So, cool.
Thank you. My name's Aaron McAfee. I'm the operations manager of Organic Pastures Dairy. And my dad, Mark, he's the one who's been hogging the microphone all day. We love him though. And I grew up on a farm, but it was not a dairy at all. We had an apple orchard for a long time. And when I was a sophomore in high school, we bought 320 Holstein bred heifers, and we had them coming fresh before we even had a milk barn. So sometimes we've been accused of getting the cart in front of the horse just a little bit. But what happened was really neat. We were an organic valley dairy, and we didn't even know what raw milk was. As far as I knew, it would kill you. But people from LA started coming, and there was a huge vacuum because Altadena wasn't selling raw milk anymore. And they said, wow, this is a really neat place where you have awesome conditions, and I bet this milk is pretty safe. And we said, I don't know, it's probably going to kill you. And they taught us that raw milk was safe, and they taught us how to do raw milk. And so our story is pretty much listening to consumers, and we've been consumer driven ever since, and it drives the products we make, it drives who we hire, and it drives everything, literally, distribution, creamery, everything is driven by what Facebook says, and we're launching products literally this week based on what Facebook has asked us to do. So we milk 380 cows or so today, about 1,200 head total, but a lot of that's bred heifers and dry cows and calves and everything else. But I definitely think that becoming a RAWMI listed dairy, a lot of it has to do with your mindset, like my dad said. And part of it is having someone like Dr. Katarina Bird, who's a very nice lady, but she can tell you that you're doing everything wrong. Yeah. And you have to be willing to accept that and not get mad at her and realize that she means the best for you and she wants you to be better. And you have to be able to be humble enough to know that you don't have all the answers, but you can surround yourself with a team of people who do. And so that's what we do. That's why I'm here not milking cows, because I have a really, really good team of people that help us out. So we have a little bit different model than some of the people up on the stage, but we all have the same goal. We all want to serve the customers, and we all want to have good raw milk.
I was going to point that out, that right now we have pretty much the broad range of spectrum, from the large scale to also the backyard homesteading, which I think is great because we're all here as a community. So as part of RAWMI and part of working with this organization and seeing everybody that's a part of helping everybody get to a different level, part of what we were talking about with the RAMP programs, and the risk assessment management protocols that are put into the different producer farms. What I wanted to ask you guys is, and I'll open it up to questions for you to ask as well, but being a member, you obviously appreciate the community and you're getting a tremendous amount of help, but can you go through specifically and maybe 1 or 2 things where actually how RAWMI has actually benefited your farm and your production on a very practical level, so we can hear a little bit more about your experience. And if you want, you can. I know that.
The mic's over here.
Yeah.
Let's just go back to pinball.
You can just go this way. It's okay.
So RAWMI has helped a lot. We, in all truthfulness, I think we thought raw milk was this superfood that everyone was telling us how much they're getting cured, and we were just, I think we had a little bit of a false sense of security about how good raw milk is. And I think one of the keys is, in all truthfulness, becoming a little bit more respectful of the potency of raw milk and understanding how important it is that we do raw milk right. And I don't think we fully understand that in the beginning, and it's an evolutionary process that everyone probably needs to go through anyways. But RAWMI was really influential in getting us to understand and bringing in really talented people to help us develop our raw milk risk analysis management plan and really look at all the details that we didn't understand. And it takes a separate set of eyes to do that. And there are things that as a producer you won't see with your own two eyes, but your customers will see, your inspectors will see, and if you're under the radar, you might not get that perspective, and you really need it because it's in your best interest to be getting that feedback. So separate set of eyes is really critical for me.
Would you say that with not having the inspectors be that third set of eyes too, it's less risky?
Yeah, definitely. RAWMI is never going to publicize any of the results of their findings. It's all directly between whoever comes, whether it's my dad or me or Catbird or somebody. We're going to give you positive feedback. We're going to give you negative feedback. It's your choice what you want to do. Of course, there's a decision to be made because RAWMI is putting their name and saying, we believe in these people, that they're doing the right things every day. But at the same time, it's totally just feedback. And my conditions are different than your conditions. What works for me is not going to necessarily work for you. There's some common standards that could be applied everywhere, but it's absolutely safe. This is a happy place. There's no one here that wants to hurt us. Although we've taken a different stance on regulation at the same time. My inspector's a really good guy, and I get a lot of good feedback from him. And he works with me, and he gives me a chance to fix things before he writes me up. So it's both. It's the fact that RAWMI is a safe organization and they want to help, but it's also a third set of eyes to make you better for your regulators.
I think one of the big things for us, since we are in California and we are not in Erie, we're operating as a herd share, was, as we wanted to go out and not be flying under the radar, but to be letting everybody know exactly what we're doing. The DA for our county, his daughter's on my soccer team. We wanted to make sure that our sheriff came and saw our operation and understood what we were doing, so that we could be confident, as Patty Chelsea said, because a good example for, hey, make sure that your sheriff is your friend and that he's going to back you up and confirm that what you're doing is right and legal. So we wanted to have a good story to tell them when we're talking with our DA and with our sheriff. And so RAWMI gave us the confidence to look at our plan. Our plan was pretty good and we were doing a good job. But in having somebody else look at your operation and say, this is good, why don't you tweak this and this, then we had the confidence to be able to say, look at our sheriff, this is what we're doing and this is why it's good and it's clean and it's right, and why if the CDFA decides to give us trouble, you can know that you can tell them to, hey, back off, I've already been there, I know what they're doing, and it's good.
Good point.
Well, good point.
I wish RAWMI was around a number of years ago. By the time I had heard about it, I'd already been, doing a lot of these things that I could have learned really in the beginning. And so I had a lot of everything in place. We'd already done procedure manuals. We had already done a lot of the information, but I never ever had anybody that was supportive in the raw milk community. Our vets, told us they didn't want to be there. They didn't want that responsibility. So we didn't have anybody to fall back on. So when RAWMI came along, it was a really good opening just to have that contact and answer questions. And Dr. Burge, one of the biggest things I learned through RAWMI, as I grew the farm, we grew very quickly and we started bringing cows in, and without having anybody to find out, the quarantine days, we figured 7 days was good enough for quarantine. And so that's what we did. We made sure we quarantined 7 days, put them back in. But going through this, she's saying like at least 21 days. So these are some of the things that from the health perspective, what they're looking at, and some of the practices that we were doing, but they're thinking we're not really great practices, but we didn't have anything to go back to find out. And so it would have been really great to know a little bit more of that information. And I think that anybody that starts, it is such a great tool, and they can just, they don't have to reinvent the wheel, it's already done.
I would say overall, RAWMI has really upped my game. And when I first talked to Mark starting a year and a half ago, I was doing everything I thought I should do and milking my cows. And he took it to a whole new level of the seriousness and of what we're doing. And so I probably had a page of procedures and safety things that make sure me and my employees took care of. But after working all summer last summer, back and forth, creating this ramp plan that I'd never considered, because I was just milking a couple cows, but putting it down on paper and going through, where's your well, and how close are the animals to the well, and asking questions, safety questions that I had never thought of before. It gave me a whole new level of confidence, like you guys raised or said too. And now if people ever question me about my milk, I can unapologetically, I am so confident in our product. And if anyone ever asks, well, aren't you worried about making anyone sick? Absolutely not. Now I have a 7-page plan of, we look at every single little point along the way that I never considered 4 years ago. And so if there's ever an issue, we spike a higher test score, I've got it broken down into 200 different places, and I can look at each one of those and identify what it is we need to tweak. So it's really brought me to a whole new professional level of very confident that we are providing this product that I have a lot of confidence in. Even though I only milk, 3 or 4 cows, it just really ups your game, and it really has helped with marketing too, because when you have that confidence about your product, people sense that, and they can go through your plan too and feel the same confidence and feel comfortable feeding their family what you produce.
Okay. And then part of what's going on is each one of you are definitely at your own level, but you're all growing from what I know and what I see. And in that growth and bringing out those issues, how do you think you're going to deal with things like cross-contamination or growing with the quality as your quantity increases? Do you think that that's something that will be a challenge for you, and how do you plan on handling that?
Yes, it's a challenge. I've realized that I am maxed out at 4 cows, and I'm, like I said, hinted early on. Because in Oregon the laws are different, people have to come to the farm and pick up their milk. So I have currently 120, 130 people coming every week. And I run a farm full-time, and I have 3 kids, and so I'm not big enough to hire someone to do all that stuff. That's me, and I'm much more comfortable with 80 people, so yeah, and even the waking up at 2:30 in the morning, jolting awake, going, oh my gosh, did we change that gasket? And when you have 80 people in your community, you're a lot more intimate with them, and you know that they give you a lot more grace. But now that we've grown, yet we haven't, I can't imagine what you guys do with 60,000 people drinking your milk every day. But yeah, I've reached my capacity. I'm backing off a little bit, and I'm very confident at the quality of our product at this level, and I have no desire to go to 6 or 10 or anything else. Part of that, though, too, is our laws in Oregon limit what we can do.
I was going to ask you, in terms of jurisdiction, maybe also bringing out how the policy in your jurisdiction or in Oregon affects that.
Yeah, we are.
For each one of you too.
We're allowed.
California.
Retail sales of raw milk are illegal in Oregon unless you have 3 cows or fewer and people buy the milk on the farm and you do not advertise. On the other hand, they aren't enforcing any of that because the Department of Ag has no resources to do so. So we've got a lot of people doing all sorts of things. So it's really a free-for-all, which is why I hope to implement a version of the RAWMI standards, hopefully in our legislation in Oregon over the next, 5-10 years, just to have some basics, because right now anyone can get a cow and sell the milk in any condition they want, and there should at least be just some basic common standards.
Does Oregon recognize herd shares?
Or it doesn't address herd shares, but we have lots of people doing herd shares to get around the 3-cow law. So we've got people milking 20 plus cows doing a herd share. Oregon has really taken a hands-off policy, like, okay, we're not gonna mess with you guys because you haven't messed up yet. Of course, we had the E. coli outbreak a year and a half ago that's kind of blown away, but we've kind of heard this threat, 3 strikes, you're out. So, you know, we've had our one big strike. So it's, yeah, we kind of just maintain right now.
But do you want to hear the question again, or you're good?
Regulation.
Yeah,
Well, also regulation
growth.
and then how you're growing, what issues you're dealing with now as you're dealing with either issues of growth, quality versus quantity, or practical issues like cross-contamination, things that you're dealing with, as well as your jurisdiction.
sure. Well, it's been a journey over the last number of years, so we've had to deal with a lot of those issues along the way. One of the things about having something like RAWMI, which I'd always longed for a number of years back, was because it made more accountability to the people. Because as we grew, it wasn't just me anymore. I wasn't just milking the cows. I wasn't controlling every aspect. And when you start to push it off, and if people don't have the same understanding, then you start to run into issues, and there's no accountability. So having the standards there, it pushes the responsibility. It opens up that responsibility, so it's not just on myself, but as to everybody that was on the farm. And so we did run into a few of those challenges along the way that we had to teach, and you know, just kind of learn hands-on. As far as the regulations go, I mean, right now in Canada, things are kind of crazy because there's 100% prohibition on raw milk. According to, there's a regulation, it was a transitional regulation under the Health Act that determines all raw milk that's not pasteurized at a licensed dairy plant, and I really heavily say at a licensed dairy plant because it's 100% supply management, then it's considered a health hazard. So it's a total prohibition right now in BC through the court systems, and we've got 2 things kind of going, and one of it is it's under cosmetic products right now, just like in Australia, and so we've got this one stream of fighting that we're going on the negative side, that we're not even dealing with anything about raw milk. It's all about laws so far removed away from whether it's healthy or not. And then we have the other stream that we're trying to meet with the health regulators. We're trying to go through legislative process and trying to build those bridges, and that's working, but it's a long journey that we're taking at this point. So.
Thank you, international.
Well, we're operating under a herd share in California, so I don't really know what the rules are. We're just doing it. No, I do. You know, we are very much out in the open. We've been telling everybody what we're doing, and so far, no one's come knocking on my door except people looking for milk, so that's good. And as far as growth, we're not really growth oriented, honestly. We are, like I said, very much community food people. There are limits to our land, and we're looking to reach that equilibrium of having the right number of cows for our grass and to serve people that are right in our immediate community. Our vision for growth is to see a farm like ours about every 5 to 10 miles in all directions. And so I guess we are growth oriented in that I talk to lots of small family cow owners, a lot of whom have been in very much a similar position as we have. They have a cow, they have too much milk, their neighbors want to buy milk, they don't want to go to jail, they don't want to make anyone sick, and I see small producers gaining confidence through the information that is being distributed through events like this. Before we ever made a phone call to Mark, I mined the RAWMI website like crazy. I read these guys' ramp plans and Christine's. It was such a great exercise to go through all of those steps of what they were thinking about in terms of production and comparing them to what we were doing, and making comparisons that way. And so that was, even if you never get listed, that is such a useful exercise. And so, I don't know, I would say probably one of the bigger challenges that we have is what Dr. Kat was talking about is having access to healthy livestock and bringing in, because you asked about, contagion issues and that kind of thing. We are not in dairy country. I think there's one grade B dairy in our whole county. And so when we go looking for an animal, it is very challenging. And so this community that's being formed here is also very important for community food sustainability and dairy, because I look for family cow owners. And when I bring a new heifer onto our farm, I'm looking for the one cow farm who's raised that calf up from a baby and who's done all the tests before she ever comes on our land. So, but that is a challenge, and so I think that's one thing that is improving with community for sure. So, yes, anything?
And one last thought, there's been a lot of talk about the ramp plans. Since I'm the one in the barn doing the milking, along with a couple of others, when Shauna came to me with this big long list and said, I want you to do this, I looked at it and said, well, we're already doing most of it. But the key thing is just to think through that whole process. Because as we got to look at some of the things that these ladies were doing on their farm, realized, well, I'm not doing that. And why aren't I? Because it just takes an extra 20 seconds to the process. And every little step that you can do that improves your process, once you've done it, it's part of your plan and you're trying to follow your plan, it improves your protocol. Once you do it, it becomes a habit and you just do it. And every little thing that becomes habit that is going to further reduce the chance of any type of contagion with your animals or with your milk is going to help you to deliver a better product. And if you can deliver a better product, then you're going to be getting the hugs that Mark was talking about. And I got a lot of hugs yesterday. It was great.
Aaron, you're a much larger producer, so I know the challenges for you are a little bit different.
Yeah, so this may not be terribly popular, but I'm just going to say like it is because that's what we do. We're all about transparency, and we are focused on growth. And there are people in San Diego and Los Angeles and San Francisco, and they're never going to buy a cow. And someone needs to provide them a good, safe alternative. The challenge is doing it without compromising your mission statement and your core values. So my dad mentioned clean, clean, hot, hot, cold, cold, green, green. So there are limits to your pastures. We have 400 acres, so it's a little bit different. We might not be able to cut, rake, and bale half of it in alfalfa if we're grazing at all in pasture. But yeah, you have to do that. And actually, we are at that point right now, like literally. And I'm doing a project plan, and we're trying to think, at what point do we max out our current pastures? 500 milking, 600 milking, I don't know. At what point does that happen? And then do we want to just have more dairies? Do we want to stop? Do we want to recruit really good dairies that want to do it themselves and own it? Like everyone knows that an owner will do something better than a worker. So I think that we are absolutely at that point where we are because remember, we're a dairy, but we're also a creamery, and we're also a distribution company and a marketing company. So we're trying to figure out where do we fit, and we don't know. We're pioneering this market. No one has a template for what you're supposed to do when you start milking 450 cows, and what do? Do you stop? So we're thinking through it. We have a really good team. We make decisions as a team, so it's not my dad running around telling us what to do. We all talk, we have dialogue. My sister's involved, my mom's involved, we have hired employees that are involved, and everyone cares. So I do think it's the right thing for consumers to have more access. I agree 100%. We should have more small dairies. That's why we're here. I mean, you'd think we're crazy for giving the formula away, so to speak, but that's what we're all about. We think that the rising tide floats all boats. But at the same time, you go to Sprouts in any store in California, and there's raw milk right there. And there's Sprouts everywhere now. So we've even got some of our distributor friends are here in the back, and they are selling our milk like right now. So.
And California is a unique example because we do have such a allowance for raw milk versus Canada or even Oregon. So we have a whole different model here, and I think we're actually very lucky to have that because we can protect our access to raw milk. So I'm going to open it up to questions, but I'll just say a few comments. First of all, thank you, all of you, for being here and taking part of not only this panel but the conference and sharing what you've gone through and also how you're developing and growing within this community. I know that a lot of this comes down to just confidence building and very simply common standards to become professional. So I appreciate that, because as a lawyer, it's easier for me to work with people that are knowledgeable on things that I'm not knowledgeable about. I'm not a farmer and I'm not a scientist, but when I look at numbers and I'm able to see something concrete, it gives me the ability to do my job better. So thank you for doing what you're doing, and I'm going to open it up to a few questions. You guys can either use the microphone or yell it out.
Just always repeat the question.
Okay, I'll repeat the question as well. Mark?
I'd love for Aaron to tell the Amish story. I love the way he tells it. The Amish saved us, let's put it that way.
I do not want to hug the mic, but there's a really cool slide if this even works. Otherwise, I'll just tell the story. But we had a reality check in 2006, and we had a recall, and it was scary, and we had the lab coats, and we thought raw milk was indestructible. And then we learned that, in fact, you could be in big trouble with raw milk. So we had changing, all at one time, big microcosm. We had changing, we had less than 10 coliforms, which is brand new. It was 750 before that. We had a recall. And we basically said, okay, there's a whole bunch of microdairies out here, literally in this audience. And we thought, how can we, as a commercial dairy, commercialize what microdairies are already doing? We called it Amish. But the Amishmen, or microdairies, or cow shares, however you want to consider it, what they have is they have 3 cows that they baby, and they just pamper, and they probably pet them and wipe them down and everything. And it's a little bit different in a commercial environment, but how can we do that for all of our cows? And so what we did is we commercialized the microdairy model. And we literally went from grass to glass. That's kind of our little slogan. But we went from the pastures, and how can we make them as green as possible, and how can we move them more frequently, and how can we bring in special nutritionists that can tell us more about our conditions and how to improve them. And then we went to the milking process. How can we be cleaner there? How can we keep the machines out of the manure? What can we do? And we didn't spare any expense, and it was expensive, and it's a big portion of our milk cost. But we just took no prisoners. We just said, we are either going to go big or go home. And we decided to go big. And our bacteria counts have never been better. And we called it the Amish model, because literally we said, okay, we can make less than 1 coliforms in a bucket. We know we can do that. And we're just super clean. But literally doing that with 20 machines and you're milking 100 cows an hour is a whole different deal, right? So what we did is we took the Amish model, we call it the Amish model, but it's the microdairy model of milking a cow in a bucket, and we applied all those principles that you would do with your 1, 2, 3 cow dairy, and we just applied it. And basically you have to create systems, and you have to have really good employees. You have to pay them very well so they do the right thing at 2 in the morning, even when you're asleep. And you have to have systems for when things fail. We have a red tag thing, and if there's a bloody cow, that milk does not get made into fluid milk. And we have a whole process for what do you do with abnormal milk. So we took a model of a microdairy and we just commercialized it.
Great. Go ahead with questions.
Can we get that light off? Yeah. No, I just can't see. The light is blinding. That projector light.
I just think the idea of being listed on a website that says, oh, hello, I sell raw milk, is like begging for the CDA
I want to answer that.
or something. And like I already have customers,
Yeah.
and they're, fine with it, but I like the concept of being able to validate that you're trying to do your best to provide a product. But I just think, oh my gosh, there's no way I'm gonna put my name on this website. So I'm asking, how is it that you guys didn't feel the risk that I feel like I did?
Go ahead, I mean, you're with the
Well,
herd
my
share.
understanding is that not everybody has to be listed publicly with RAWMI. That is an option. I know Alice is not, right?
When I'm listed, I'm
You're not publicly listed. You are listed, but you're not on the website.
for now.
We used to think that being under the radar was a safe place to be. And I will tell you, it's been a year and a half ago, we were not even really a herd share. We were a family milking cow with the help of a few very close friends. We had 2 cows at the time. I didn't do Facebook. We didn't have a blog. We didn't have a farm name. We were completely off radar. And inspector from the CDFA walked up to my door and knocked on the door and said, "I've had a report that you're operating an illegal dairy here." So I don't think there's any such thing as being off radar. And so I still am not sure how that story got circulated. And she was a very nice lady, and it went well. It actually was a beneficial conversation that we had. However, because there's a lot of misinformation, and that was not long after the big California herd share crackdown and all of that, our philosophy is, given that we're not off radar anyway, I want the powers that be to get the story straight from me, not from, the airwaves and things circulating. And that's why we've been very proactive about telling people exactly what we're doing, because if it's not legal and somebody's going to hassle me about it, I really want to know. If the shoe's going to drop, I kind of would like a heads up. And so that's been our philosophy. But that is not the, and we're fairly community-oriented people. We're not really under the radar kind of folks. And that doesn't fit everyone. And I don't believe that that's a requirement for working with RAWMI.
Well, and I know I'm not on the panel, but as an attorney who's actually litigated some of these issues and actually gone to court for cases where people have been arrested and put in jail, this is a clash of ideologies. And it is played out very heavily in the media through character assassination. And we see that very readily with a lot of the outbreaks and what happens with the CDFA and CDC. So one of the things to build that transparency and have that confidence is to become transparent. Yes, this isn't marijuana. These aren't drugs. This is raw milk. And the more that people know that, we saw that in the Hirschberger trial and in Wisconsin, where we had before Hirschberger's trial and it went to a jury, an actual jury for the trier of fact. Before that, we had the Fiedler ruling, which was basically a judge dictating what the people want to have access to. And so to dispel all of that and to make our community more empowered, we have to stay closely together and understand exactly what's going on this scientific level, as well as taking away the fear that we have to actually be transparent. So everybody gets to that decision through their own process, though, and I don't say anything about making those choices. It's a very personal decision.
It is a very personal.
It's a personal decision.
Yeah.
So, and I'd like to also finish that thought with, we're either going to hang together or hang separately. I think I heard that earlier too. But here's the thing: if everybody who's doing it, and we don't really know who's doing it because so many people are under the radar, but if we all stick our hands up and say, "Hey, I'm doing it, and here's the 100 families that are doing it with me," then those who would choose to regulate us or over-regulate us, once they get to see what they're up against, they may decide that they really don't want to give us any trouble.
And sometimes the regulators are not knowledgeable themselves. Sometimes they need to be educated. I have farmers around the country where they have great relationships with their inspectors, and they're the ones that are educating them.
I guess.
This is related, I think. Do you guys have any stories of customers, or in your case, Aaron, maybe regulators or even other commercial dairies that are educating themselves using RAWMI's resources, coming back to you with questions that you never answered for them, but they've been doing their own research?
Well, I think Mark gave the example of the Arkansas people, the farmers down there, and looking at the website. So
Did you say customers?
Okay, good.
customers and unions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
Customers definitely are so much more informed and educated today than 4 years ago. They've just been getting more and more aware. So 4 years ago, they would just show up and say, "Oh, my friend told me I should drink this." But now they come armed with, "I read about this and I read about that," and they have hundreds of questions, definitely. We don't have regulators in Oregon, but I can tell you my vet that works with me is becoming more aware of, because we don't have a raw milk culture there previously. He's now listening and becoming more aware. our De Laval store I was talking about earlier that serves all the big dairy people. And a year ago, I went in there and introduced myself, and I'm sure they laughed when I left. I was in there last week, and he said, hey, you've been sending us all kinds of people. We now carry bleach in the gallon size for you guys, and I've never had raw milk. And I said, well, next time I come in, I'll bring you a jar. So yes, I see people in all walks of life getting more educated all the time.
And I'll say one thing on that. Regulators are also knowledgeable about regulations, so they may not understand what we're talking about here.
And I actually invited many of my friends that are producers, and our nutritionist, Harry Marcos, is here, and a lot of our dairyman friends are here. But I was talking with our dairy inspector yesterday, actually, Steve McGinnis, really nice guy, not PhD, but he's got his bachelor's in dairy science from Cal Poly, really nice guy. And he teaches us a lot. And once I changed my mentality and the whole culture changed, where we weren't looking at them as the enemy, but we were looking at them as basically consultants telling us how to be better, it really changed the dynamic. And I was telling Steve, I'm like, hey, so you coming to the training day tomorrow? He said, no, I'm gonna have to go incognito. And I said, no, we want you here. You're like a shepherd and we're your flock, and you need to know that this is happening, because whether you like it or not, this is happening. And people, we're doing about 20,000 gallons of raw milk a week right now in our creamery, and it's all getting sold, and you need to know that's happening. And so putting your blinders up doesn't do any good. Come to the training day. He couldn't make it, obviously, but come to the training day and see what's happening. So.
And it's coming out there. Mark and I gave testimony to the Dairy Council and CDFA a few months ago, and a lot of the topic was dominated by raw milk. So it was a very interesting shift, I think, from the last 6 years. Go ahead.
Sean had a question.
That's good.
I would like to talk about the liability insurance that's associated with producing raw milk. Because we all
Mark?
know
No,
I'm thinking to myself,
I can talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah. I've had farmers myself. It's very cost prohibitive to switch over, but you guys know more than I do, so.
Well, again, in Oregon, since our law is different, I have raw milk product liability insurance that I've been told will not be renewed. And it's 4 years ago, it was much easier to get it, but with all the politics and all the media attention to it, they one by one, carriers have been dropping people in Oregon and canceling insurance because raw milk is not illegal. Retail sales of raw milk are not legal. So it's just too gray of an area for them. So, and I own a farm, we have all, like you said, we have a lot invested in this. So that's part of my reason for backing off. I feel, having 80 close friends as customers be a little less liability. But I've also gotten some really good advice from Mark and my insurance agent, who both of them, including my agent, said, go without. He said, you've got your farm policy. And oh, by the way, don't tell your farm policy you sell raw milk. And so you're covered if there's an incident. And then once you have if there is an incident, then we'll search further. So I was really scared not to have product liability insurance, but after talking with both of them, I'm a lot more confident that, and he said, eventually we will find you some. It could be $10,000 a year, at which point I have to decide where it's important. But that's a really big issue, and it's a reason that I'm deciding to scale back as part of the reason. Because I feel like I'm just out there with no protection once they decide not to renew it, which we've been told will happen.
Question.
I can say a lot of things about insurance. Do you know what? We don't have insurance. We don't have liability insurance because they won't insure it. The herd share aspect of it is an ownership. So we do have a contract with all the members, and that is that they are owners. Therefore, products not being sold, and it is their product. So they can't turn around and sue the farmer because of something. It's under their responsibility. It's their product. Having said that, that's where it's really great to have something like RAWMI as a guide, because when you have all those things in place, if you're doing the right things, it's going to alleviate that risk. And I just leave God in charge of the high end of it, because there's nothing else that we can do for it at this point.
I mean, there are other resources out there. I'll plug Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund. You know, we're out here. We definitely, as members, we offer legal services, and we have attorneys in most jurisdictions, but we have a team that flies around the country. So, but we'll finish with that question and then we'll move on.
The best insurance that you have is the relationship you have with your consumers. And for all of us, and especially those who are very small, we know every one of our consumers. And part of why we're with RAWMI is because it's giving us the confidence to know that we're producing very high quality milk. So my friends are feeding it to their kids. I want to make sure it's really, really good. And likewise, they know, because they're there and they see what we're doing, that we have a good plan and that we're doing our best to make very good quality milk. That being said, if something were to happen, the chances of them suing us, I feel, are very low because of the relationship that we have and the trust that they have in us and what we're doing, and that we're doing our best. But that you can't do anything perfectly.
And if they do, we're done.
Yeah.
We tell them that, basically.
Within California, we're very fortunate we have laws that allow us to sell raw milk legally. And I know that other places don't, but within California, I feel pretty confident we've been able to get liability insurance. And we've got a lot of risk with a big target on our back, obviously. And we feel that one of the reasons is because of the Raw Milk Institute and the fact that we can say, look, we're not just doing this. We would never just do this. We are doing this with a plan. And we have it thought out and it's vetted, and we have a 24/7 transparency policy where anybody can show up at any time and see what we're doing and nothing to hide. And so I think the Raw Milk Institute helps to alleviate some of those issues. Maybe not where raw milk's basically illegal. That's kind of a tough deal. But where you're fortunate enough to do it legally, and everyone should tell their inspector, I'm doing raw milk, and go through the process. But Raw Milk Institute helps you with that because it gives you that kind of label, whether it's organic or Raw Milk Institute, but it gives you that structure that someone is watching and helping you and guiding you through the process. And we always refer the listing companies over to our liability insurance company. So Raw Milk Institute, I think, helps with liability.
I like that the Raw Milk Institute also kind of lends somewhat legitimacy in some way because you are a part of a community and actually coming together, which is an interesting aspect to getting insurance even in the first place. So it might be something that gets developed in time as this community builds. But I think that you guys are spot on with your community and the connection to your community being the most important variable in eliminating or limiting that risk where eventually you have that divide and conquer. So I've seen it on both angles. I've seen jurisdictions where the community is so strong that they stay together, like in Kentucky with John Lee, where his members, when he was raided and had holding orders, his members went in and actually said, they gave their numbers and their names to the inspector and said, hey, come and knock on my door. Yeah. And he actually got an apology letter. So that's how strong the community can be versus a situation where you have, something terrible happening like in Oregon where people are getting sick. So it's a wide spectrum. Okay. I think you had a question, right?
Yeah, I did. I was kind of curious whether, from your perspective, is there a more bulletproof type of approach to selling raw milk? I mean, there's a lot of models. There's the Buyers Club and certified, raw milk situation. Any of those better from a liability perspective? Any of those particular models helpful in terms of coverage to encourage us to go that direction?
Every situation is different. This is probably a more legal question that you can address one-on-one given your variables. But generally, having that community around you and understanding your jurisdiction, getting to know your inspectors, knowing your laws, because this is all public. We have the ability to know what is out there. So understanding your jurisdiction, understanding your own community, and in terms of models, in California, we have a wide variety of allowances. We have commercial raw milk with organic pastures, as well as herd shares. And in terms of a model, it's still such a gray area, and so little has been litigated in this issue that it really is so important what we're doing here today. Because that community that we're establishing now is what, for example, I'll mention Vernon Hirschberger's case in Wisconsin. It was only, but for his community, he would be in jail. He would be guilty on all those charges, but for his relationship to his community. And that was a very small herd share type of contract, but it's so gray in today's current situation that we are developing. And in California, I mean, I've been a part of litigation that has been literally a lead zeppelin, sinking and drowning.
If I could get a shot at that real quick.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mark, where you at? Do we go through? There you are. Mark is, in my opinion, one of the only dairies in California that actually has a authorization to sell raw milk out of his bulk tank completely legally to the public. It's not quite good. There may be others, but he's the one example that I know of personally, doing a great job. He has to meet the same standards that we do in our fish products. So he's getting a 10 call form, 0 pathogen test out of his local health department for selling raw milk legally to the local community. So there's different levels of authority given to different levels of production and different stages of law here in California. So there are different models. As far as the most bulletproof, I don't know that there is something bulletproof with raw milk or any food. If you look at the leafy greens initiatives and those issues, they have all kinds of challenges with pathogens and spinach and all kinds of stuff. And I think what we have to do is look at the best practices and lowest risk and accept that there's always going to be a risk until we can build a market and a community that actually has proven itself and distinguished itself. And I say distinguished with some, it's pretty rarefied air to say that, but I mean, it's one of those things where we have to create a track record. This is pioneering work. You're paid well for it, you're hugged, you're appreciated, you have incredible health in the next generation that you can really, really feel good about. I sleep well at night, my son does. All of us sleep good at night, knowing we have a plan, we look at the risks really, really well. But I don't know that there is a bulletproof thing going on. I think that there's just a low risk, very best effort. That's my position as far as how that goes.
But also realizing that there is no one template, and not only is that our approach when we certify or list someone, that everyone's circumstance is different. What you're going to do in British Columbia, where you're going to get thrown in jail, is totally different than what you're going to do in California, where you could literally start raw milk in 6 months. So it's one of those things where I don't know that there is a real template. There's some really interesting variables to put into a formula for success. But it's literally totally different. And we would never force upon someone what works just at organic pastures and force you to fit into that hole. It's not like that.
We don't know what works because so little has been litigated. We've had literally 3 cases that I can think of. Dan Brown in Maine, which lost. Vernon Hirschberger in Wisconsin, which kind of won, is still out on appeal. And you have, unfortunately, Rawson, which was a nightmare, a bloodbath. So we're in a state of being where, as long as we're understanding what's going on and developing with the community, then yes, it is risky for all of us. It's risky for me as an attorney, but I still do it because I know it's right. Or I know that I can dispel the fear by educating myself and being a part of the community. I hope that answers your question. Anybody else? Way back there.
If you could stand up and speak really loud.
To what?
To try, if you had your consumers want to feel, try to get the feel or a suggested
Yeah.
No way.
That's kind of like the co-op
Run out of
model,
money.
collective model, and we actually have examples of that in California with, medical marijuana type of thing. I mean, it's true.
Yeah.
It's treated the same way. It's actually treated worse, unfortunately. But we look at that, and yes, there are things where you don't put prices on the items, or it can be used. Actually, I've seen it used as evidence in litigation against the farmer. Well, the tag had a price on it, and it was like used like a store, and they'll equate that refrigerator to a store. So these things are coming up, but we're still dealing with a lot of variables, and like we said, it's a gray area, and every case is different. But go ahead.
I'm just curious, so is a herd share in California legal? Because as far as my
You answer. No,
Yeah, we'll let the herd
You answer.
share answer that.
I can answer that. As far as I understand the law, that there is and Patty probably could answer it even better than I could. In the California dairy law, there's a provision that says a private owned home producing for their own use is exempt from having a dairy license. Dairy code doesn't say that the animals have to live on your property. And so that is the exemption that we're operating under. Our herd share represents private homes producing for our own use. And so what
People are coming and taking it off your farm.
That's the same issue as we saw in Bird and Hirschberger. And so that goes still to the jury, and it is an issue. It's for the trier of fact. And because that issue hasn't been litigated in this jurisdiction, we don't know what California says. We know what Wisconsin says because the jury came back and said, hey, we want to have access to food. Hey, those laws may be overreaching, and we need to stop this ridiculous, over-aggressive behavior.
It may be helpful for Patty to remember what Richard Estes said in the first opening day of the small herd group. We don't know what a cow share is, quote unquote.
Right.
It's not in law. We don't know what it is. It could be a 1,500 cow organic dairy. It could be 2 cows. We don't know what it is. So they admit themselves they don't know what it is. It's not defined.
And I'll say one thing as well. When I researched this issue on a legal aspect, we have ancient laws. They're called Agister laws. When you educate yourself, you understand that these things are ancient. These were common law dicta, basically, from England, and there were laws called Agister where herd shares were allowed. And somehow, through over-regulation over the past 50 years, or, I think in California, the AG came out with guidelines in 1948. So, again, this is a matter of what was once our right is now over-regulated, and how do we get back to something that makes sense? Go ahead.
Can I comment too first?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I may be inferring it, but from so many of the questions, I get a sense of fear.
Yeah.
And what about this? What about that? But a sense that people want to do it. So what Sean and I decided after producing for our own use and for a couple of other families over these last several years is that since a herd share isn't specifically defined, we're going to read the laws, we're going to understand them to the best of our ability, we're going to confer with people who know, and then we're going to define a herd share ourselves, working within those laws. And then we're not going to be afraid about it, because on our website we have a page for regulators, and Mark helped us with some language for that. But it very clearly defines, out in the open, what we're doing, why we believe it's legal, and that we're going to do it. And in doing so, we're showing, from have a consult with an attorney friend, we're showing specifically how and why we're doing it, and the reasons that we believe that it fits within the laws, which then gives us at least some protection to show that we're not trying to skirt the laws, but that we're following our interpretation and a fair and honest interpretation of that. Until somebody's going to tell us differently and prove to us that that's not right, we're going to do it. But in the meantime, we're going to be serving the people who want raw milk, and we're going to be setting a precedent of what we're doing.
And that's where the community comes in as a variable. That's why it's so important.
And if you don't have a big dairy and you're not looking at it from a production standpoint, then that totally makes sense. If you are out in the audience and you're sitting there and you've got a small dairy and you're suffering and you're thinking about doing raw, there's really only 4 things you have to do. Is be TB free, less than 10 coliforms, less than 15,000 SPC, and pathogen free. The problem is it's really difficult to get that done. And so that's why RAWMI is critical. But it's not that challenging. It's legal and it's doable. We do it every day. So with the right focus, it can be done. Obviously, if you don't have a big milk barn, you're not going to go construct one without knowing for sure your market. It's very risky. If you have a bucket milker, it's a herd share question. If you have a dairy and you're literally considering is it feasible to transition, it's a matter of talking to RAWMI and getting the conditions right.
Well, also with mentorship, one of the things that I've heard today is the doctors that are knowledgeable, the people that have gone through the experience. It's a developing issue. So each one of us, even within the law, I'm dealing with it because I had no idea that this was going on until I got involved and saw what people were going through. And to be be a part of something more positive versus, oh, I don't know, there are a bunch of regulators that are throwing a bunch of regulations and charge stacking on my clients. Well, unless we do something, then it just goes under the rug and doesn't get addressed. Then we're not staying true to our idea of being transparent, being professional, having that community together, and providing the common standards so that we're constantly getting better and striving to be better. Go ahead. Yeah?
I'm curious, Sean, Jacob, I know you're taking that home skill, per chair model, and you've gone public, so to say, and you say that no one's knocked on your door in a negative light, just people wanting them. So I'm curious about the positive impact of that, because that's something I want to do. But like you said, Jacob, I've been operating from this place of fear. Oh my gosh, we have a 2-year-old, and I'm scared, we have this mortgage, and we have so much to lose. However, I want to know, I'm frustrated because I can't reach my audience that wants my milk. And so I want to hear from you guys. You went public and said, here's what we're doing, come one, come all. How many people have been knocking at your door? Can you sell all the milk that you produce? How is this impacting your business?
So are you asking, are you operating from a place of fear of regulation, or are you operating from a place of fear of making your friends and family sick?
I'm scared to market my milk because I don't want everyone to know what I'm doing.
Who don't you want to know what you're doing?
Regulators.
The regulators,
Can I
okay.
say one thing before you
Yeah, go
answer,
ahead.
is that there's a big difference between what they're doing as a herd share
Yeah.
versus selling the milk.
Yeah.
There's a huge difference.
Herd chair perspective. Well, I guess our history is, for 5 years, our community's been asking us for milk. And so, yes, we have all of our shares were sold in 6 weeks. You know, we have about 100 gallons of milk a week that we produce. And so, yes, it was gone immediately. We're starting a waiting list. So, anybody want to come open a herd share in Siskiyou County? Come on up.
Customer's ready to go.
Go ahead.
And that's with no marketing. It's just with a simple website and a Facebook page, and we're well established in our community, so we know lots of people there and have a good reputation. So that certainly helped us. But we're 9 weeks in, and like Sean said, we're already completely sold out.
One of our we've defined our terms of ownership and membership in our herd share. We don't sell to the public. And right now, like you all, would be public. And so we have some really distinguishing marks of what makes you an owner. And one of those is attending a farm tour. It's about an hour. And during that hour, it's kind of like they drink from a fire hose. They get our complete grass to glass plan, thanks to our rent plan. They love it. And we also talk about why you have to come to a farm tour and why you can't just come to the farm and buy milk, and why we're not at the farmer's market, why you have to pay a fee to buy into the herd. And so we feel like we have an extremely educated, conscientious group of share owners, and that takes away a ton of fear for us because they are with us. And we talk about it in terms of co-production. They are co-producers with us. And we talk about them in terms, we talk about our cows, not our cows, but our cows. And so that's a big piece in changing the awareness of our cooperative. It's a very different model. Both are good models, but it's a different model than what these guys are doing, or even what you guys are doing.
Right.
So.
Awesome.
Go ahead, a few over here.
Can I ask you how much a share is for a gallon's milk?
Do you want from all of us?
Yeah, I mean, because I'm very concerned because I see milk going for very different prices. But when I do the calculations, because I have a mortgage on my farm, I have workers' compensation, I have all that kind of stuff. And I see a big variation.
I don't do.
And it tends to
I'd love for you to
depend
talk about it.
on
Right.
the
This is
landlord,
12.
the landlord.
Okay.
I just want
That's
For
a
now.
really broad question,
So we can
because I think that it's also a changing scale, because it's based on what's happening within that season, or at least some of the ways that I've seen the donation process. I've had farmers give away milk to families, because they can't afford it. I have clients that come in with a mom with 5 kids who can't afford to feed her babies. And And so it really, this is a different model. This isn't a thing where people are out there and saying, okay, well, I'm going to bilk the consumer by charging X, Y, Z for a gallon of milk. It's more, well, these are my cows, I care about them, and the community is something that's a very different environment versus walking into a store and selling something.
Yeah, but you need to charge enough.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
you need,
I can talk about that.
Charlotte has some brilliance
Are
on
you,
the subject.
and you're asking, you aren't a producer yet?
no, I'm not
Okay.
yet, but I have 1,300 CSA members.
Yeah, all right.
And
So,
I have eggs as well, pasture-raised eggs, so I'm in the same kind of boat because of
right.
how much you charge for pasture-raised eggs.
I work with about 100 different producers in Oregon over the last year and a half. I started the Oregon Raw Milk Producers Association, which is really just an educational community. We give seminars on our farm and invite everyone there. And I see people get into the business, spend a lot of money, lose a lot of money, and they're out of business within a year. So, but I mean, really, quick answer to your question, you're not going to be profitable in the first couple of years like any small business. We charge $16 a gallon for our milk now. December 1st, it goes up to $18 a gallon. We don't make $18 a gallon. The costs are very high. What it does, though, is it feeds all the customers for our grass-fed beef and our nutrition classes we teach and our eggs, too. So it's great marketing for that. We also, part of our farm tour is same as Shauna, it's about an hour, and they are made aware in the education process that our prices go up every year, and there's never a shock. It's like, oh, yep. And we have a program for people who can't afford it but really need it, because I can't afford to give it away. But if you want to come hoe tansy out of my pasture on a Saturday afternoon, I'll trade you a gallon of milk per hour. And we have a lot of people. A guy came over and sawed up the tree that fell across the fence last week and traded milk. And I have a woman, stay-at-home mom. It's not in her budget. She bakes me 2 loaves of bread each week from soaked and sprouted grains for the last 4 years that I don't have time to do. So I find a way to meet the needs of the people who can't afford it, and then everyone else finds a way to make it fit in their budget. But it's too hard of work to sell for cheap. You have to, and it's better to start out charging more than you think you should rather than try to catch up, because you'll lose your customer base, but
You
start
guys
out.
aren't getting subsidies.
No.
There's no programs for this.
My husband is the subsidy,
Yeah.
We subsidize it
Almonds.
ourselves, really.
Okay.
In BC, well, when I started way back when, before I started, I was getting milk for $5 a gallon. And then when I actually started the herd share program, somebody came to me and said, you need to ask $15 a gallon. I said, absolutely not, I couldn't do that, I can't gouge people, blah, blah, blah. He said, you gotta do it, or you're not gonna be here. And so I did, and I wasn't comfortable with it. And he's right, I wouldn't be here today if I didn't do that. Because it took more than that. And I'm in the same position now too, because we should be raising our prices. We're at $20 a gallon.
That's Canadian.
That's Canadian, and it's also, because it's cosmetic, and either it's a cosmetic or it's a service under the herd share and there's GST, the first $2 goes to the government. That's trying to shut us down. But the thing is you gotta get your price, and this is one of the challenges that we face within our other business. We have an online farmers market, we work with all these farmers, and it's trying to get the price that it takes. We've come so far away from what the cost of production really is, and it's increasing so rapidly with the cost of feed costs and everything else, that these farmers, like, chicken, pasture chickens, they're saying, well, I can't sell it to you for less than $4.50 a pound. And if we want to take that into the city and turn around and market it, it seems ridiculous what you have to pay, but that's what the farmer needs, or they're not there next year. And so I think as consumers, you have to be aware that there's a lot of work and we're losing our farming community. And we need to pay the price, whatever they're asking, because they're not out there to gouge you. They just need something to pat them on the back for the hard work they're doing.
That goes along with voting with your dollar.
Yeah.
We were actually talking about this. Okay.
Ours is 12 a gallon for
And
this year.
We're only from the 1st of August with our herd share, and we chose a little bit different approach. I wanted to make sure that we got to a point of being fully sold out before we raised prices. So we started at $12, and in just 9 weeks, we're now sold out of milk and are creating waiting lists. So we chose to go that route, starting at a place that it was sustainable, even though that's a lower price than what we'd ideally like to get, knowing that once we were sold out, we'd have the ability to get to that market price.
That is a really good question. You have to cover your costs, otherwise you're not going to be here. We've been doing raw milk for 13 years. 2012 was our first year of profitability. We would not be here right now if it wasn't for 160 acres of organic almonds that have subsidized our business.
Yeah.
And people think, oh, you're making $120 a hundredweight, you're just rich. No, it's not like that. So when you have a hundredweight mentality in your head about what milk is supposed to be worth, and then you realize, whoa, they had to bottle it. They have a liability insurance plan that is really expensive. They had to drive it to the store. The store wrapped up 30%. If you use distributors, they take a cut. It's cheap compared to Starbucks, which is more expensive, or water. And even raw milk is really cheap, I think, relative to the value you're getting with the health benefits. So you need to cover your costs. You have to make sure you know. I know exactly what my costs are at. And I'm happy that I feel like we're leveraging our overhead finally, and we should be dropping our costs to the consumer, and that's my goal. But cheap raw milk should scare the heck out of you, because the question is, now, if you're efficient and you're herd share and they come to you, yeah, you don't have a distribution cost, great. But cheap raw milk makes me think, okay, there's all these steps. Which ones are they cheating on?
I agree.
Which ones are they not doing? Because they're all important, from wiping the udder down to feeding the cow very good. None of that's cheap. I would be happy to pay for raw milk and make sure that it comes from the best, absolute best conditions, and no matter what the price.
Thanks, we have a few more questions. Go ahead.
I think something, especially for the gentleman that isn't in the business yet, that we, amongst ourselves, that's one thing to say, this is what I sell milk for, but we can't really get used to saying that in this environment. We have to, just a heads up, we have to watch out that we don't say, I sell my milk for, da, da, da.
Yeah,
That's why
it's so
that was
critical.
good, because of the-
We need to make sure we don't sell milk.
Oh,
We don't sell
well,
milk.
yeah, I see what you're saying.
We board people's animals. That's how we operate. That's how we make a living. We take care of people's cows for them. They pay us to feed their cows, to wash their cows, to milk their cows, bottle their milk for it, put it in their refrigerator. That's how we make our money. That's how
It
they.
is, we don't sell any milk.
So true.
I wouldn't even say make our money, it's more like this is our ownership model. Because it's a whole different ideology, and
Co-production.
that's the point that I make, is that it's not a matter of sales, it's more of a matter of, this is a community, and yeah, if I want to get bread, and, you know, one of my owners want to come and weed all the dandelions out of the pasture, great, then we're building that community, and that's the difference with what I see happening within this movement versus the regular, you know, food storage facilities that we call stores. Big concrete buildings everywhere. I don't believe in those things. So it's part of that, and I really appreciate your point.
I'm done.
Go ahead, we have a few, I'm gonna actually go in the back, behind you. You, yes.
Back to the pricing. Really got to the point where you were raising next year, so we were expecting the change. I don't feel that
Well, I think that what they're saying is there wasn't a negative feedback.
No, there is negative.
Yeah, there wasn't negative feedback, but it's the explanation or the community. Because I don't want to spend too much on the pricing issue.
Okay, I invite anyone to come to our barn spend the day with me and see if they want to get covered in manure and pee twice a day and do the work we do and miss breakfast with your family and then say, okay, how much would you want someone to pay you for doing all these things? But yeah, pricing is a hot issue. I've been called a rapist and elitist and all that. It's like, come milk my cow, you know.
Well, and there's a big misinterpretation out there. When I started down this journey, I didn't understand why things were, why this was happening until I actually got in my car, drove 3 hours, and saw what the heck was going on. Until then, you're sterilized from the reality of the food process and the actual system that goes along with that. So to educate yourself, I would implore you to, get to know your farmer. Get in your car, start experimenting and educating yourself and asking those questions. Go ahead.
Yeah, I
Thank you. Yeah, definitely having that community is so important. Go ahead, Ms. Steele.
Where do you get your milk tested and how you do it?
Good question.
Well, in BC, we actually just, we have a lab that we ship it out to in Richmond, and there's a number of dairy labs out there. Originally, when I started, before RAWMI came into effect, I was sending out tests monthly, getting E. coli, Salmonella, Listeria, Campylobacter, and was getting a test of everything. We spent a lot of money on testing. And then until we met Mark, and Mark said to me, well, why are you spending money on that? All you're looking for is that needle in the haystack, and you're probably not going to find it anyways. And so from there, we're still using the same lab. The tests go in, and we just get our results emailed off to us.
First of all, get familiar with rawmilkinstitute.org.net works too, it's the same thing. But we put our ramp plan right on there, and one of the first slides, there's a statement of purpose, what we're doing this for, and then the second slide is the team. We have employees that are part of our team, but we also have vets, Raw Milk Institute, our lab, Sierra Dairy Labs for us, but they don't do everything, so we have to ship to Silica, and A&L Labs does our manure testing, and so there's a whole team that you have to have around you when you do raw milk. Regulators are part of your team, distributors are part of your team. If the customers come to you, then it's a moot point. But if you go to rawmilk.org and you look at listed farmers, you find organic pastures, these binders, which you can look through, I have nothing to hide, this is my bacteria counts, my cold temperatures, hot temperatures, everything. In here you'll find the names, I mean literally. So getting involved, asking questions, no, none of these people have anything to hide. We'll tell you who we get tested by, how, physically, when. Do you culture fresh cows? Do you culture late lactation cows? What do you do? We'll help you. I was talking to a producer for like an hour the other day, and I had things to do, but I talked to him, and it's fun. It's good. Camaraderie.
I'll make one point about the testing too. One of the slides that was shown with I forget his name, but the attorney that goes and sues some farmers.
Bill Marler.
Bill Marler.
Okay, that guy.
Food safety.
And when you understand tests, then you're not scared anymore. If you go and talk to the doctors and actually inform and understand how those tests work, you're not going to walk into a trap with an attorney and get screwed. So it's always good to not only ask the questions here, but also see for yourself what things mean, and also just understand the tests themselves.
5
Yeah.
minutes, you can have Dr. Daly speak.
Okay.
I was just going to ask, specifically, there are a number of dairy labs.
Yeah.
UC Davis is one, there's several in the Central Valley. And there's also, we do a variety of things on our farm. We're in the Boone at least, we actually don't have overnight shipping from where we live. So we figured out a way to have our milk tested locally at our local junior college by a microbiologist who's consulted with RAWMI. And we've also are getting some materials so we can do quick on-site testing, which is not as reliable, but it's helpful for our own purposes. So there's a number of ways to do it. It has to be cold. The milk has to be cold.
Yeah, and that's a bit when some of the inspectors come in, making sure you have double-blind testing is important too. Sometimes you don't know what happens to that sample when it leaves your farm or when it's tested. So that's always good to have third party as well. We have one more question. Go ahead. Yes.
My name's Sherry, and I just wanted to thank you, Sean and Jacob. You've been a great inspiration to my husband and I. We were in the same place you are. We had like 17 customers up until like July 31st. And we saw your website, we saw the strength and just the transparency that you had. And we thought, we had the conversation. Are we going to go for it or not?
Cool.
We had to decide whether we're going to stick our neck out and do this. And I just wanted to thank you for being such a great inspiration to us. We went on Facebook, we got our farm legal defense papers. My daughter got us on Facebook. We now, 2 months later, we have 50 customers.
Woo.
All right. Hey, do you want to do one more question or okay? Dorothy?
All I want to say is that I did this in the 80s, and after my kids went, because of graduation, I've gone through this with them also already. You've got to operate out of knowledge, not fear. The powers that be can only work within the parameters of the law. It seems, and I'm sure that's the same in the States as in Canada, sometimes it seems they have an army of law, because they're literally, their funding sometimes is unlimited, but they still can only work within the parameters of the laws. So that law works for you as well as for them.
yourself, keep this community strong. So we're all here for you, and we'll break into Dr. Daly.
I want to thank Ajna for coming all the way up here. Thank you so much. You're always a breath of fresh air, being respected on the national level, and always nice to have an attorney as a friend. But this dialogue doesn't stop today. This is we're begging you to continue this dialogue, continue this community. You've got some great mentors here, there's some great mentors out here. Pick on Mark over here, he knows what he's doing. There's some people here from Chico State who knows what they're doing with their organic cows. So we want to build a community, and I say that repeatedly because that's our intention. So continue this dialogue, and we'll continue to communicate and share and get better as we go. It's very critical. So with that said, why don't we stand up and stretch our legs for a second, and then Dr. Daly's going to tell us a little about packaging testing, and then we're going to get a nice
Hey,
tour
Paul,
of the dairy.
can we take our picture standing up?
Yes.
The RAWMI.
Can I start looking through these?
Huh? I know. I want a copy of this too. All right.